Hey Zach, Michelle here. I wanted to give you some feedback on the stories that you edited. Um, Good job on the headline. I feel like first of all, it was a little more clearer. And it was a little bit longer, which we talked about in class. Um, I'll talk about that in a minute. Good, I see lots of good changes, 1880s, adding his last name. Although here we should probably add his last name again, um, just to be clear. And then when we switch, we'll have to switch down here and I'll show you that in a minute. But yeah, I feel like yeah, eighth grade, good catch, midwife. Uh, all good changes. Let me just go to my version here and just kind of show you some things that I thought could also be edited. Um, I kind of took a little bit of liberty with the first sentence because as a lead, my great grandfather, which I think I'll probably have to change because I think I made that wrong. Um, was born in Ireland in 1849. That just doesn't do much for me. I think saying, and like I said, I've got it right. David Mitchell, who would become my great grandfather, and his brother came to America in the late 1800s instead of in the latter part of, after leaving Londonderry, Ireland. To me, that just tells us a little bit more. Um, Instead of saying he left his farm behind, I said he left behind his farm, which was taken over by relatives for a few generations before farm hands were changed. And things like they were employed as farm hands for several years on a farm. Well, if they were employed as farm hands, we don't need to say on a farm. So kind of looking for things like that to get rid of. Um, and things like a woman named, let's just say he met Mary Horton. Um, Instead of saying the children were moved to be farm hands, they were sent to be farm hands. To me, that makes a little bit more sense. An eighth grade education is the highest he received. Well, you don't need to say during his lifetime. And then adding that he would be my grandfather. He's not now, great grandfather. I didn't understand this, so I will have to ask Zach because oops, I see I misspelled called there. Um, because her brother and his wife had helped spare her the extra money. Um, had helped. Why not just had given her extra money um, to buy it? I spare her is just kind of an awkward way to say it. Okay, and then he said right here, my grandfather Linda Crawls, but that was her married name. So she wasn't Linda then. She wasn't also his grandmother. So we need to say her um her last name, which I assume is Mitchell, but I'm not really. It's not really clear to me who her parents were. I'm assuming Joe. Oh, her father, Joe. Okay. This is just awkward, I think. Um, I kind of rework that. But it doesn't say anything about his great grandmother, which um, it might be helpful. Um, oh, we may live a different life than our ancestors than from. Um, I tightened up this sentence. Angie met Todd Hankey in college when they worked together at a Hy-Vee grocery store in Lincoln. Um, okay, so just tightening it up there, I think is helpful. Um, okay, so let's look at the other story. I'm gonna click on this and get out of that and come back in just a minute. And Bree's story, and I like what you've done again with the headline again. I think that's a little bit clearer, more forthright, straightforward. Um, I think you're making good changes. I didn't see anything. I liked that. Specifying who they is, authorities, that was good. And then distinguishing between a regular person, yeah, that was good. My only question is, oh, yeah, American Dream actually is lowercase, and you changed it to be uppercase, but AP says lowercase, so that was kind of a mistake. Um, I feel like the big question here is who is Reuben saying this to? Because he died. So I think we need to clarify who was he telling this to? And that's not clear to me, and that's kind of a big bone of contention. So that would be something I will definitely ask Bree about to clarify because that's not clear. Okay, let's look at how I edited it. Okay, pogroms. I don't think everybody would know what those are, so I just said violence against Jews, which is what the definition is. I mean, if there were a way to uh, explain that later, maybe, but she kind of moves on pretty quickly. So um, I just kind of tightened up the lead that way. I didn't want to say great-great-grandparents because, again, that's not really accurate. They weren't murdered. They weren't her great-great-grandparents when they were murdered. Um, but I think it's okay down here because we say one of the daughters would later become my great-grandmother. Okay. This is a comma splice. I would either add a semicolon or a period. But that's with a comma that's linking to sentences together. It's a splice of a sentence. There needs to be a bigger pause, either a semicolon or a period. Instead of reached the conclusion, which is wordy, let's just say concluded. And again, I had torture, I had suffering, that's a comma splice. So I added a period there. I feel like that was a pretty, either one would be fine, a period or a semicolon. But again, I think whenever this looks like, I think the first quote, we need to say here who he was talking to. A master's degree has a apostrophe. And then I just made this, during his time at UNL, Reuben met Margaret Johnson, whom he married. He then decided to work on his newfound dream of being a doctor. And instead of saying MD, medical degree, I think is preferred. So yeah, just a couple of things to look for. But the main thing is we need to make sure we know, is Reuben speaking from the grave, or who was he actually telling that to? That will make sense for the reader. Okay, let me know if you have any questions.